nothing has life without the spark within it, right? So if the spark is raised, the vessel is now, you could say, dead or waste, or right. And because he's throwing away, casting away the external part. All right, so what's the Parsha about, Rebelli?
All right. Hi, everybody. So as we explained last week, these two Parshias really are normally read together. They fit together, Taziri and Metzora. And we're spending a lot of time with the great depth of detail in the rules regarding something called tsaras, which is normally incorrectly translated as leprosy, because I guess they couldn't find a better word for it. Tsaras is basically a spiritual disease that would manifest itself in the times of the temple in a physical form, in the form of a skin disease. In other words, you wouldn't say Lashon Hara and wake up the next day with a skin disease all over your body. God would provide warnings and an opportunity for the person to repent before he would get hit directly. So the first thing would be that a person would notice on the walls of his home, and this is important because this is going to be what we're going to be dealing with today. He would see spots of different discolorations on certain areas of the walls, which was stone or earthen at that time. And then he would have to call over not a doctor and not a contractor, but the Kohen. The priest would come over and determine, and this whole process, which I'm going to skip, but here's what's important. They would try to scrape it off. If it would come back, then they would remove those particular stones. If it would still be there after a certain period of time, they would demolish the house. They would, and in between, they would have to move everything out of the home like an exterminator. You move everything out, and if it still didn't go away, the person still didn't repent, they would demolish the home. This is going to be key for later. Now, if a person still didn't get the hint, then he would wake up and his clothing would have discolorations and weird things happening. And then the whole process ensued. If he still didn't get it, then it would come on the person's body. That out of the way. So we understand this spiritual malady that manifested itself physically in the times of the temple. We understand a little bit about the process. It started with the wall of the home, then it went to the clothing, then it came to the skin, and we understand that there was a purification process, a lengthy purification process. Now, let's go back to the walls, because this is what the Bedicher is going to be dealing with, the walls. There's a medrash. Now, he's going to quote this medrash. The medrash explains that something amazing happened. There was actually a positive outcome of getting saras on the walls of your home. Because as I explained, what would happen is the Kohen would come, he would give a detailed inspection. It could be that it wasn't saras, it was saras. If it was, they tried to scrape away the spot. If it came back, now what they would do is they would have you move everything out of your home as part of the purification, and they would remove these stones that were affected. Now, what would happen, a miracle, so to speak, would happen when they removed the stones. They would look behind the stones in the wall, what's behind in the cavities of the wall, and they would find
a treasures,
because the people that had previously lived there from the 7 nations, the 7 Canaanite nations who previously lived in these homes before the Bnei Israel entered the land.
And there were no banks in the There were no
Right. So
banks and safe
right.
deposits. So
So this was their safe in the wall, so to speak. They kept their treasures and they left in such haste that many of them left the treasures in the safe behind the wall.
here, so we'll see the Kedushat Levi here is actually, it takes it Kabbalistically to one of the very basic, the Halat Nitzotzot, one of the basic, you could say, principles of how the according to Jewish Kabbalistic cosmology, what our our purpose on earth is, which is to release the sparks. So first thing I want you to know is that nobody needs to know Hebrew in order to benefit and take care here, take part of the lesson. But if you are Hebrew literate and skilled, and you want to follow the Hebrew text of the Kedushat Levi and also the Pasuk in the Chumash, so you can go to our website, and we have a source sheet where that material is, and I'll show you where the source sheet is. You go to Jewish resources on the website, and you go down to Parsha videos, and once you're in Parsha videos, there you have it. The source sheet for Metzora video is here. That's one thing. The second thing is that while you're at the website, check out the other resources and programs that we offer here at Hebrew Learning Circles, and particularly I want to point out the simple meaningful bar bat mitzvah. And if you or anybody is interested in a simple and meaningful process for having a very special ceremony, so get in touch with us. And then also, if you would like to attend this lesson and stay for live discussion after the short presentation of the materials, go to weekly Parsha and Chassidut Spirituality online, which is on meetup.com. Join the meetup group, and every Wednesday at 9:00 you can join us here. Finally, I'd like to ask you to like, share, and subscribe. We totally appreciate that. So first of all, for those of you who want to look it up in the Chumash, the verse that we're commenting on, which is chapter 14 in the book of Leviticus, verse 34. When you enter the land of Canaan, I give you as a possession, and I inflict an eruptive plague upon a house in the land you possess. That is you see here, the translator says eruptive plague instead of leprosy, which is, at least they are true to form in not saying leprosy and trying to
at least they got that right.
Yeah. So it's not purely the medical, does not fit the medical definition of leprosy as we moderns know it. And as Rebelli explained before, the Rashi on this, and this is a Kedushat Levi is really explaining the Rashi. And the Rashi he brings that midrash that Vaikra Rabbah about the house gets this mold or mildew or something on the walls. You take out the bricks and you find a treasure. Says Rashi. You think it's bad, but it ends up for the good, right? So, all right, so let's jump into the Kedushat Levi, and here we go. He starts with a quote from the verse that I just read before. And I give you the eruptive disease in your homes, in the homes that you live in, when you come into the land. So Ayen Berashi, let's take a look at the Rashi, says the Kedushat Levi, Shu Besora Tova, Mipnei Otzaot Shitminu Amorim, that this is actually good news. Besora Tova. Because of the treasures that the Amorim, and the Amorim here is the Amorites, which are one of the 7 peoples of the Canaanites, but this represents really all the inhabitants of the land that the people of Israel, when they're entering the Promised Land, they were actually instructed to chase them out or to kill them. And we're going to come, we're going to come to that in a moment. But anyway, the point is that because the Amorites have left their homes, and now you come and you occupy their homes, and guess what? There are treasures in the bricks when you need to take them out because of the eruptive mildew or mold or whatever discoloring that is spreading on your walls. Haklal, the principle here, Haikar hasimcha. The most important thing is the joy, and he says Haikar hasimcha k'shadam maleh nitzotzot. And here he says, but this particular joy is when a person is elevating the sparks, the hidden sparks, and we'll explain the Kabbalistic framework here in a moment, l'avodat haboreh, as part of one's divine worship. Ukshadam maleh nitzotzot. So maybe we should pause here for a second and talk about these nitzotzot. You want to say something about that, Rebelli, how that works?
Well, he's getting into real heavy-duty mysticism over here, but
so the brief, the kind of like
we'll give the reader what they used to call the Reader's Digest version. No one knows what that is either anymore. The Twitter version, you can only have so many letters. So basically, one of the major theories in terms of what happened cosmologically when God created the world. One of the things that occurred was that if we think about a vessel holding a lot of something, and even if we think of a glass vessel and you shine a very bright light into it, but the light is so intense that what could happen is that the glass could shatter. Yeah. So when we think about God and God's creative energy, and we think about us, the created, as being the vessel. Yeah. Creation as being the vessel, and God's creative energy as being the light in that metaphor. Yeah. So obviously, there's no relationship between God, the creator, and the created. So if that light is going to come in too strong, it's going to be too intense. It's like if we're a little bit, if the Earth was a few miles closer to the sun than we are, we would just sort of melt away and burn up, like toasted marshmallows or something. So everything has to be just the right balance of light, of what you're filling into the vessel and what the vessel can hold, right? So that's an understandable metaphor. So the Kabbalistic idea is that when God originally created the world, there was a sort of it wasn't calibrated 100% correctly. Now, of course, parenthetically, how could that be? God doesn't make mistakes. We're not going to go down that road. Suffice to say, for this piece, we need to know that there was something called the shattering of the vessel, so to speak. That's the terminology, the mystic terminology. Now, what that caused was that in our physical world, material world, which sometimes can seem very displaced from spirituality and godliness, it's sort of hidden in this world. But hidden is a good word because these sparks of light, of godly light, which sort of flew all over the place as a result of this shattering of the vessels, they ended up hidden within the materiality of this seemingly low-level physical coarse world that we live in and have to deal with, are hidden these really, really holy sparks of godliness. And one of the jobs of a Jewish person is to work with the world and through the world to try and find those sparks and return them to their source, so to speak.
Right. So thank you. And the printed. No, this is beautiful. I love Rebelli's Reader's Digest, and it's very relevant. It's Twitter-like, and I mean, you can't hear Kabbalah more up to date.
Right. On one foot, as they say.
on 1 foot, right? But the only thing I would add to that is that it's another way that to think about the mitzotzot being that the sparks being hidden within materiality is they're locked within materiality. So it's kind of like a shell. It's like a nut in a shell. They're locked in there, and our job, a metaphor with it for the spiritual path and the spiritual job is to crack materiality, so to release the sparks that are locked in there. So, and that's only a little nuance. The reason I want to bring that up because the metaphor of Rashi's midrash is a metaphor for the sparks. So the treasures hidden within the walls is the metaphor for this whole, basically the essential purpose for human, especially Jewish people, but human being on earth is to release these sparks, to find the treasures and let them.
Right. And just to add a coda to that, because a person might think, well, how in the world does a person even get started going about doing that? That sounds like a pretty heavy thing to do. Like, what's the method? So we have something called mitzvot.
That's right.
The Jewish people, when a Jewish person does a mitzvah, this is the key.
That's right.
To unlock the treasure.
We've read that Ha'ikar Simcha, the joy, the principle of joy that a person finds in when they are releasing the sparks as part of their divine service. And he describes the process. K'she'adam ma'aleh nitzotzot, when a person is raising sparks, אז הפנימיות שבתוך הניצוצות ההוא הוא מעלה אותו. Then the inner part of the spark is being raised to its source. If we're thinking, obviously this is, we're thinking our limited three-dimensional human capacity. But when we say rise, obviously rise up to the Holy One, to eternity. So when a person is raising a spark, the inner part of the spark is rising, but the outer part of the spark, and here I'm not 100% clear if he's talking about the klipa, like the bricks of the wall, or he's talking about something more subtle, internal. But never mind. The point is that there's an internal part of the spark, but there's an internal part of the spark. That could be the vessel that's holding it, and that is being tossed.
Right. The stones are being removed.
Right. The stones are being removed, and that's being, he says, zorek, it's tossed away because it has no use. It has no life. Nothing has life without the spark within it, right? So if the spark is raised, the vessel is now, you could say, dead or waste, or right. And because he's throwing away, casting away the external part, that is the reason that there is this eruptive plague in the house.
Right. So not only is there a positive to take from having a mold on in your home, which is a very bad, right? But not only that, but it's a metaphor for the spiritual work that we are doing.
That's right. But what's interesting here is that he's saying that the spiritual work by design has a refuse, has like some, there's the wood chips, the wood, the shavings that are left, right, are actually, you could say, impure, or are on the other side of the holy. And then he says, he says the refuge that's inside the spark is corrupt, is rotting, right? And that's why we get, so in the spiritual work, there is some leftover of the impurity, and that's what causes, that's what expresses itself as Yeah,
right. But I'm thinking, I don't. Let's see where he goes with this. I think he's saying something even deeper, which I'm trying to figure out what he means. I think he's saying that in taking it on a personal level, that in order to get to that treasure, in order to release those sparks, it requires like when you plant a seed, the seed rots and then the plant grows. So I think it seems that it's inevitable that we have to sin. Like I
right,
think there's something with screwing up
right.
with I don't know how
It's
exactly,
part
but
of the
something
design.
with through the screwing. I have to screw up to get
Yeah,
to release that treasure, to
yeah,
find it.
yeah. To get the what's called the emergent property, to quantum leap to the next spiritual level, there's got to be some rotting, some breaking.
Yeah, like Shlomo Hamelech says, the tzaddik rises and falls
Hmm.
7 times. But it's interesting, like why that should have to be.
Maybe he's turning that midrash on its head, which the Hasidic commentators will often do. They'd be saying it's not about tzaraat, it's about doing good spiritual work that has, maybe that's his whole kavana. Maybe
It's
he,
clearing out. It's clearing out
yeah,
the junk.
maybe he's saying this is not the result of sin, but it's a result of being actually extra diligent in mitzvahs. But there's always something that's the refuge,
Uh,
the klipa.
okay,
That may be his point. I don't know, but let's see
okay.
where he goes.
Let's see. Uh,
V'chan shetziva Hashem yitbarach lo techaya kol neshama. And this is why in Devarim, in a different parsha in the book of Deuteronomy, it says, and he's quoting here, "Lo techaya kol neshama." So they were when they were learning the rules of war, and they're being given different instructions, different mitzvot about what to do in different cases. So what's interesting here is that it says that when you're at war with a faraway city that's outside the bounds of your promised land, you should, and this is apropos to what's happening now, you should say, give them a chance to make peace with you. Right? First, you give them a chance to make peace. If they don't make peace, then you can war against them. And when you war against them, you can kill their soldiers, but you can't kill the women and children, etc. But the people inside the land of Israel, those you have to kill. There's no peace, right? It's a little harsh. That's one of those things that usually, for many of us, including myself, it rubs you the wrong way a little bit. What about a little compassion? But this is very clear that God tells him the 7 people within the land of Israel, if you're at war with them, you need to kill everybody. Intense. So what he's saying here, I think, and I'm curious to hear your opinion, Rebelli, is he saying, well, this is really a metaphor. Because those 7 people in the land of Israel, they are the ones that have the spark within their homes. So it's a metaphor. You can say that in order to relieve these sparks, you really have to cleanse out the vessel. And that's, what do you think?
Absolutely. The chitzonius, he's mentioned this word a few times, the superficiality.
Yeah.
So the 7 nations, the 7 Canaanite nations represent superficiality in the sense that it could be they're unaware of the treasures
Right.
that are laying behind the wall.
Right.
They themselves are unaware, metaphorically.
Or they're unaware that these treasures in gold and whatever are actually really spiritual treasures. They still think that's material. They don't see the spiritual spark in it.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
So they represent chitzonius.
Right.
superficiality.
Right.
So in order to access these treasures, these spiritual treasures, all the obstacles have to be cleared out.
Right.
So the Kanani within me has to be dealt with. I have to deal with that. And sometimes it can be like you say, I just have to put my foot down in terms of my behavior patterns, in terms of how I'm interacting with people, or in terms of mitzvahs, and I have to just put my foot down and get rid of that part of me.
That's right.
But there's other parts that can be utilized, just have to be cleaned off, scraped.
Right. Well, to me, this is for me. This is a chiddush in the following way, and I'll tell you why. And I'm excited about it. Is because if the Knani within me, if this is a metaphor for my inner work, and I have to scrape, I have to kill. If I really have to be tough on myself, tough on my negativity, or tough on my bad habits, as he said, but I have to be compassionate with that which is outside of me. So what does it say? Because the Arim Rechokot Mimcha, right? The cities are far away from you. Then you have to offer peace. So that what is it saying is that be compassionate with everybody else, be harsh with yourself. What we usually do, we're compassionate with ourselves and harsh with everybody else. And this is a great, it's a great chiddush for me.
That's a good chiddush.
Yeah, and if you see, a real tzaddik is really tough on themselves, right? You see that, real tzaddikim, they're really medagdik, they're really working very hard on themselves. But everybody else is like they have they have love and compassion. They're just exuding love towards you, right? I've seen that. We've seen that. We've seen that in Holy Men, And the principle is hard on yourself, easy with others. And when you know that somebody's not a tzaddik, when I'm not a tzaddik, I'm very easy on myself and hard on everybody else, and my children, on my, So this is for me. This was a chiddush as I was reading this. Okay, let's continue. וזהו שפירש רש"י בשורה מפני האוצרות שהטמינו שהם ניצוצות. And this is what Rashi meant when he said good news, when he said that this condition of eruptive, what do you call it, disease or
plague
or stains, or what's happening in your house. He calls this good news because there are hidden treasures in there, which are the sparks. So this is what he meant.
Yeah.
And when he says good news, he's talking about joy. And he says that true joy comes from the elevating, the releasing of the sparks up towards their source.
The punchline is that he's saying that true joy comes from a person experiencing this and being true to their spiritual selves. And uncovering their spiritual selves.
So uncovering their spiritual self and being tough on the distractions within themselves. It's like, and often we think, spiritual is all doing good, but it's not only all doing good, it's also clearing out the rotten bricks.
Right.
So may we all be blessed. We're going to wrap it up here for the purpose of the presentation. We're going to invite those who are in the meetup room to join us in live discussion. Before we say goodbye, everybody, thank you for being with us out in cyberspace. And please like, share, and subscribe. We do appreciate that. Until next Wednesday, shalom for now. So